My name is Joyce, and I'm the Communications Manager at TechSoup Canada. I'd like to welcome and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar on how to manage a scattered nonprofit team. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly introduce you to TechSoup Canada for those who are not aware of this organization. Our mission is to help nonprofits use technology effectively, and we do this in two ways. The first is to make technology products more affordable through the Technology Donations Program. We partner with corporations such as Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk, and Symantec and offer their products as either an outright donation or at a significant discount for charities, nonprofits, and libraries across Canada. An example of the cost savings for this would be Microsoft Office Professional. If you would like to purchase this at full retail price, it would be about $500 online or in-store. But if you are a TechSoup Canada member and qualify for the Microsoft Donations Program, you can get Office Professional for about $56. So as you can imagine, the cost savings can become quite significant, especially if you're purchasing this for all of your staff members. Creating a TechSoup Canada account is absolutely free, so if you'd like more information, please visit our website at techsoupcanada.ca. The second way we want to help nonprofits is to create and curate nonprofit tech resources. We write blogs, we create content on social media, we host events and webinars such as this one to help nonprofits learn more about the technologies that can help them in their day-to-day work. So if there's a topic that you'd like to learn more about, please let me know. I'm always delighted to hear back from our members about what topics are important to them and what they would like to learn more about. We are also part of the Center for Social Innovation, which is a nonprofit co-working space, community, and launchpad for people who are changing the world. And TechSoup Canada is part of the Global TechSoup Network, where we partner with many countries to offer technology as a donation or discount worldwide. For today's webinar, you can use the GoToWebinar panel, which is typically on your right-hand side, to change your audio settings, enter your questions, or chat with us. Our speaker will be answering questions throughout the presentation, but at the end of the webinar, we will also have a more formal Q&A period. During this time, I will ask the questions to the speaker on your behalf, as a reminder that everyone is currently on mute to ensure that our audio is as clear and stable as possible. Also, a brief note is that this webinar is being recorded and a video will be posted on our website shortly. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Nejeed Kassam is the founder and CEO of Keela, which is a nonprofit communication, donor engagement, and project management tool. Nejeed is a lawyer by training and has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years, including working with the United Nations Senate of Canada, and countless others. He's also the founder and former executive director of End Poverty Now, and author of High on Life and the producer for Conversations for Change. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Nejeed. So just give me a brief moment as I do that.
Thanks, Joyce.
No problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is this okay? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, after that incredibly embarrassing introduction, I would say thank you first. We're really happy to be here. I'm happy to be sharing some of my experiences with all of you today. My name is Nejeed, as Joyce mentioned. I'm a Vancouverite, born and raised, and now recently returned. And I'm also really proud to be the founder and currently the CEO at Keela. I'll get into what Keela does a bit later, because today I'm here to talk about something much more important, about how nonprofits can effectively manage scattered teams. Why? Because increasingly scattered teams are becoming normal parts of the workplace. There's more leniency for mobile working and working from home. And let's be honest, we all know that work life gets crazy, and we have to be able to take care of our teams the best way we know how. One of those ways is by allowing that people, our staff, our team, our volunteers, to work freely and from anywhere around the world. But we all know nothing can truly replace the trust and camaraderie that is built by senior coworkers on a daily basis. There are, however, lots of tricks and tools out there that can help get us started and work more efficiently. So before we get started, after again saying thank you to TechSoup Canada and to Joyce for organizing and facilitating this webinar, I wanted to go through a couple of ground rules. From my end, you'll be on listen-only mode. That means you can talk, scream, dance, etc., and I won't know, although I really encourage the dancing one. If you speak, however, since I can't hear, I can't answer any questions. So make sure to put those questions in the little chat box below. I have an awesome member of my team, Phil, here, and Joyce is still on the call. They'll be kind of paying me to make sure that see if there's any relevant questions during the presentation. There's also the social media, which Phil pushes all the time for me, and at the end of the presentation, I'll also open questions up to the floor. I promise I'll try to get to eventually, and thank you for your patience on this. If you do miss something and want to listen to this webinar again, or share it with your colleagues, your friends, whatever it might be, a recording will be made available after the webinar and posted on YouTube. Before we start, I just wanted to get a little feel for the room and the type of issues faced when it comes to managing scattered teams. I'll put a question up to the poll function on the webinar software, and I'll ask you to please respond with one of the answers provided. Question 1, how is your team scattered? A, working from home, B, across the state or the province, C, across the country, and D, across the world. The second question I'll ask, I'm being told I'm supposed to wait, and I will happily wait. So before we get to the next question, I'll say this. About 42% of the people who are listening today said working from home. And the next biggest cohort was across the province, with a little bit around the country and a very small around the globe. My next question is, how often do you see your whole team in person? At least once a week, at least once a month, at least once a quarter, at least once a year? And if you've never met your team, just put it in once a year, because we don't have that option actually. So from these results, I can see that at least once a year or never, and at least once a month are the most prevalent answers. That's really interesting, and definitely understand why attending this webinar is so important. Regardless of your answers to these questions, however, we're going to work together to go through into how you can work with these remote teams, whether you're working from home and you only see them once a year, or whether you are working from around the world and you've never met them, or to those you see every month. We're going to work on how we can make this more effective for all of us today. Why am I here? It's a good question. I'm going to get to it a little bit, but mainly I'm going to also spend more time talking about the problems associated with scattered teams. We're going to go through some of the best practices that I've learned and researched from my time working with remote teams. We'll look at the role that technology plays in dealing with scattered teams, and like promised, I'm happy to answer questions at the end. I also wanted to say that I'm more than happy to answer questions via email or on Twitter, or I actually don't know how to answer a question on Twitter, but Phil will teach me. But send me an email if you have a question. I'm happy to respond and to help anyone who takes the time and makes the effort to reach out. As Joyce mentioned, slightly embarrassingly, my name is Nejeed and I'm the CEO at Keela. I am a recovering lawyer. I spent a couple years practicing. By the way, that was a bad joke, and I apologize. I spent a couple years practicing on Bay Street in Toronto, but I also got the chance to work in both charity and nonprofit law during that time. I still am licensed to practice law, but I focus my time on building our organization here at Keela. Really proud that Keela is now my full-time life, and I'm able to work with this amazing and inspiring team and our amazing clients every single day. I'm an author of High on Life, which is a collection of stories about hope and leadership and change. We are really blessed to have people from, I think, 12 countries contribute to our book and help share their stories. and Prime Minister Chrétien was kind enough to write the foreword for us. I've worked in this nonprofit sector for 27 years, despite being only 30. My first memory, apart from playing tennis, is volunteering, and I've had the opportunity to work in the sector as a volunteer, a team leader, an executive director a couple times, a board member, and an advisor. But most important to all this, I'm a passionate community member, a desperate advocate for civil society, and someone who truly believes that we can all make a difference and impact the world around us. Nonprofits do amazing work. You all do amazing work. And my goal, my mission, my raison d'etre is to empower you to do more amazing work and to do it more effectively. In almost every nonprofit experience I've had, there has been a remote element to all of the teams I've worked on. It's been a reality that I've often struggled with, and I want to share some of my lessons learned and best practices with the hope that you don't make the same mistakes that I have. Today at Keela, I manage the team. We've got members all across Canada that work remotely and a couple that work from around the world. It can be tricky to make sure that everyone has clear expectations, communication remains strong, and morale is high. As a nonprofit tech company, we have naturally turned to technology for some of our solutions, but we've also discovered ways to overcome many challenges. I'm going to bring you some of the tools and tips I found most helpful in keeping the Keela team working effectively, despite any distance. As we delve into today's presentation, please feel free to tweet me now or in the future at Nejeed, N-E-J-E-E-D, and I'll do my best to answer anything I don't get to over Twitter that's not in the lecture. The problem. The problem we're looking to solve is an important one because it's so prevalent in our sector. As we all saw from those polls, almost all of us, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, do not see the people we work with most closely. Mobile teams are both a powerful and popular way to accommodate our teams in the best skill set, but there are challenges that can come from remote teamwork. You can see here the relationship between a team's performance and their dispersion. There appear to be two sweet spots. One is when everyone is on the same floor of the same building, so office tower on the same floor or in a little house somewhere working together. And the other one is when everyone is in the same city. Once countries and continents are brought into the picture, it is clear that our team isn't able to perform nearly as effectively. We need to create different scenarios that mimic the interactions that a team all sitting on the floor or at least meeting regularly in the same city would experience. Here, you see that the biggest difference between virtual and face-to-face teams is that managing conflict and decisions, as well as expressing opinions, gets a lot more tricky. We all need to have a set of tools that help us to mitigate potential conflict, have clear processes for decision-making, and when we have, and I have no doubt, when we have strong communication channels, we'll be able to more effectively build trust and encourage everyone to share their ideas and opinions. Today we're talking about scattered workers in two ways. The first of those is the majority of you who work from home. In fact, according to the nonprofit HR report, some sort of tech resource, up to 43% of nonprofit organizations have telecommuting policies. These policies are rising, and organizations need the tools to effectively manage their teams when they are not in a physical office. Obviously, the second type of scattered worker is those that are working in different offices or locations than their team members or managers. That's also some of us here today. Organizations often function at a global level with teams of volunteers and board members all around the world. We need to work in a dynamic and effective way. But let me be super clear. Mobile workers and scattered teams are not a bad thing. They are worth the pains and challenges. In fact, they're amazing. From an organizational standpoint, it widens your net in terms of attracting talent. You're able to access people who are great assets for your organizations, regardless of distance barriers. With the work we are all doing, having the best people matters, and these people may not be in our backyard. Mobility also helps to strengthen the overall morale of your workforce, allowing them the flexibility to work effectively in a way that fits their lifestyle, managing kids or people they're taking care of, etc. It just makes things more, more accessible. The key, the most important thing we need to think about is doing things strategically. As my dad always says, we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. And this opportunity, these lessons learned, are that opportunity. At Keela, our work culture is a mix of the two. People are working from home across Canada, and we've learned a lot from this process. For our remote team, I believe the biggest problem we've faced has been around the development of non-work company culture, having a forum to express opinions, because the accidental ideas, which are often the most brilliant, conflict resolution or lack thereof, and helping people understand where they fit in is fundamental to effective teamwork, regardless of whether it's in person or remote. When I served as the Executive Director of End Poverty Now, we managed more than 100 volunteers in 6 different cities across Canada, coordinating projects across the world. The biggest challenge we faced there was cohesion, making sure our team in Rwanda was talking to our team in Montreal, making sure values were the same, communication channels were the same, and things like funds were flowing effectively. Before we move on, I want to take a minute to ask you to write in the comment section on the right-hand side, what is the biggest challenge you are facing with the scattered team management in your organization? I'm going to take a break, have a couple sips of coffee, and let you think about the hurdles that you're facing so that I can make sure I address them here today. Some of the common problems that may come along with a scattered workforce include a lack of trust, poor communication, low accountability, low morale, and loneliness. As we go through some of the best practices in scattered team management today, I'll share some of the insights that has helped us overcome this challenge. But let me be clear, we are still very much a work in progress. We don't have it all right and are constantly making mistakes. But to me, that's a good thing. And for you, it should be too, as it continues to give us all opportunities to learn and work better. We've taken a quick look at the negative side of scattered teams. So now I want to equip you with some of the tools and tricks that have helped our scattered teams flourish. These 8 best practices that I will walk you through have proven useful to me and my teams throughout my career, and I hope you can also find a new perspective to bring to yours. Here are the 8 best practices that we've identified. Having goals, scheduling, breaking the schedule, consistency in team member treatment, keeping communication lines open, prioritizing professional development, hiring the right people, respecting one another. Having goals. One of the most important aspects of managing a scattered team workforce is to have clear goals. This isn't so much a tip as it is a state of mind, especially when your team is decentralized. It becomes even more important that everyone has a clear understanding of your organization's mission, programmatic goals, and each team member's personal objectives. Especially for us at nonprofits, the risk of mission drift can increase when different people are working in different places with different priorities or independent agendas. As a manager or leader, it is your job to constantly bring to your team back to the purpose of their work and to the purpose of your organization. If someone is working independently, it can be easy to forget the big picture, what we're all working towards. By having your goals and objectives easily accessible and centering your team's progress on these goals, you are less likely to encounter these gray areas. On a smaller level, you can set weekly goals for team members that are working independently. I would argue you should probably set them for people working in person too. Having these short-term goals can give you a clear follow-up point. If someone is not meeting those goals, then it's time to step in and figure out what they need to succeed. Once you do this, you can work to provide what they need, which will enable them and the organization to succeed. Just a quick story. At Keela, we set daily, weekly, and quarterly goals. Each of us communicates with our team and management to provide us with checks and balances. We set KPIs, or key performance indicators, for each member to aspire towards. This lets people, regardless of whether they work in the office, beside you, or around the world, know what they're working towards. It keeps transparency clear and accountability central to what we're doing. Scheduling. The next best practice I want to share is scheduling. When dealing with scattered workers, it's so important to keep a schedule. Schedule one-on-one phone calls, team Skype, in-person meetings if you can get there, or daily check-ins. Maybe do all of those things. Schedule what you need to do to work effectively, and do not miss this schedule. Rescheduling with your local staff is, of course, not ideal, but they see you every day and can catch pieces of your time to run through new ideas, problems, or victories even without a formal meeting. A remote team member has often kept a number of questions, comments, or ideas for the scheduled time. Skipping this meeting, rescheduling it, canceling it, can cause and create roadblocks in their work and make them feel increasingly disconnected from the larger team. Unfortunately, these kinds of cancellations can also make remote team members feel less important and less valued. This is especially important to establish if you are onboarding a new remote team member. Make sure communication is a priority from the start with all your team members. It's important that they feel that they're part of the team and understand the daily experiences of other team members. This means things like video conferencing can go a long way in team building. And again, don't skip these. They are important. They are so important. I know when you try and get 5 people or 10 people to take 10 minutes out of their schedules, someone is bound to have a pressing item they would rather be addressing. But if you set a limit, say 10 minutes on a meeting, people will know exactly what to expect, and they can schedule around these meetings. But always remember, and this might sound a little antithetical to what I just said, don't just call for the sake of calling. Don't set up a Skype for the sake of Skyping. It's important that communication have direction and purpose. Make them count. Make an agenda. If there's no reason for these meetings, they will be viewed as a waste of time, and people will disengage, not show up, or just be bored. I'll tell you another story from Keela. Excuse me. At Keela, we have a team member in Nepal. His name is Ayush, and he's amazing. The time difference can be challenging. Nepal is a lot of hours ahead, I think 14 or something. But we have to find a way to make it work. So the members of his team manage their own schedule through flexibility and creativity to have regular calls with them that align with his mornings. That's usually our evenings. He meets with his manager every single day, and on Monday night stays up late so he can partake in our all-hands-on-deck Monday morning huddle. This way, Ayush is still a big part of the team and always knows what's going on with our organization. This doesn't work if Ayush does not have a clear understanding of our expectations. Sure, there's a bit of sacrifice from each side, but most important thing is that both sides are engaged, happy, and work continues to be done as effectively as possible. Breaking the schedule. Although completely counterintuitive to my last point, the third best practice I've come to learn in managing a scattered team is the willingness to break schedule. And this I don't mean canceling or rescheduling, but being open and comfortable to communicating outside of the scheduled time. Do you schedule with your best friend at a time that is appropriate to call them? Probably not. Although my wife and I do a pretty good job of scheduling. And while your supervisor relationship will not and should not mimic a friendship, there is a thing or two we can learn about the element of surprise in these team relationships. The Harvard Business Review highlights the importance of initiating impromptu interactions with your remote team. You are literally trying to replicate the water cooler moments. While it probably seems a bit awkward at first, a little effort goes a long way. This can be small interactions that work to build trust in your professional relationship, which, for example, are sometimes built on not talking about work at all. Trust is really key here. At Keela, we have a hashtag random group in our chat that allows us to have our team members mimic the water cooler despite the distance we have. Reactions to elections, personal victories, a great sports game, a bad date, everything that's appropriate is on the table. It's important not to abuse this type of conversation and let it take over your organization's work culture, but instead build it to make it an outlet for these kinds of interactions, the same way that if your team was sitting in an office together would undoubtedly happen naturally. This is a great way we've found to build trust and to better learn about each other's personalities, senses of humor, and passion. When you learn this about the team members, you're actually able to better relate with them when it comes to work issues. You understand what drives them, the things that they're interested in, and it helps to work more effectively. I'm going to steal a sip of coffee. Consistency in team treatment. I want to talk to you next about how it's easy to fall into the trap of favoring the team that is directly in front of you or in the same city as you. You go through your days with these people or see them on a regular basis. You watch their failures and their successes and they see yours. They see you confident, they see you vulnerable. The trust by looking in someone in the eye and understanding their emotions The trust built by looking someone in the eye and understanding their emotions at a particular time cannot and will not be replaced. However, it is important to make sure, as a leader, you are maintaining consistency in staff treatment, regardless of where they work. Did you take your local team out for a treat last Friday because of a big win? Maybe you got funding for a new project. Do you regularly sit and have coffee with your local team? All of these interactions build strong relationships. They show your team how much they are valued. While this isn't possible to replicate over distance, you can make sure, for example, your team in South Africa is eating cake at the same time you're celebrating a new project with your team in Toronto. It's these small efforts to ensure equality that help build positive culture amongst the team as a whole. At End Poverty Now, this was a big challenge for me. As you can imagine, I love my team. I love my team, all of them. They're brilliant, inspiring, hardworking, passionate young women and men. Actually, they're not all young, so I should be careful. However, for those who are in the same room as you, or in the same office as you, or in the same city as you, it's easier to see their hard work, and thus it's just easier to appreciate their hard work. But it's also easy to forget the hard work being put in and day out by those working remotely. I remember one of my team members in Toronto was feeling like I was picking favorites, engaging and communicating with my Montreal-based team when I was at End Poverty Now. This specific team member in Toronto felt like she wasn't part of the End Poverty Now family in the same way. Of course, in my heart and in my head, I valued her work just as much, and she was on our executive. It was just a matter of communicating this value to her, my appreciation. I worked hard to establish a system that was more inclusive. In team conversations and one-on-ones, I made sure she felt like more of an integral part of the End Poverty Now family, with better and more frequent engagement. It took some time, some trial and error, but it made a huge difference. I've taken those same lessons and applied them to Keela. Whether it's Ayush in Toronto or Salima in Calgary, I work really hard to show my appreciation so that when things go right, they know I'm there. But when things go wrong, I've built that trust to be able to call people out on it. Communication. No matter how your team chooses to communicate, it's important that communication lines remain open. That your team feels confident to come to you with their opinions, with questions, with ideas, etc. We've all seen it too many times before. Your remote teams are working from the field where your projects are directly implemented, and they are often dealing with issues head-on. And obviously, sometimes they need to come to you with advice or permission to move forward. But if your team is working in another cultural context, they often have a more appropriate local solution, one that you never would have thought of. We ran into this a bunch at End Poverty Now. Norms, values, etc. in the Philippines or Rwanda were different from what they were in Montreal. But because you're an executive or you're in leadership or you're in management, they look to you for insight. In these situations, make sure you hear out proposed solutions to any problems that they've got. They'll bring a unique context, often a more culturally specific one. No matter how big or small the problem, listen. I say listen. You know, the adage is that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I think especially with working with remote teams, this is incredibly important. To listen, you need to have open lines of communication. In doing that, you need to understand how your team prefers to communicate. For example, a study shows that while 77% of remote teams prefer communication by email, 44%, and phone, 43%, 23% of people surveyed noted that long email chains were also one of their great problems in communication. Identify what is and isn't working and address it. Keela, for example, uses a tool that prevents some of these long conversations, and that's really, really important and super valuable for us. Some days, your remote team may be the only ones that know how to effectively fix a problem based on the strong networks they've developed. Listen to them, engage with them, empower them. You want to know that you trust and respect their opinions moving into these situations and addressing the challenges that they're undoubtedly going to face. Communication, the channels, are going to be key to building this trust. So is there a question, or should I keep going? Good. So next is prioritizing professional development. Now this might seem a little bit strange because too many nonprofits, local nonprofits with teams locally, don't do enough professional development. But this becomes increasingly important with remote teams. There are aspects of professional development that happen simply by being with a team, seeing how people handle different situations, and stepping in to support each other when needed. When separated, people usually have a clear outline of their specific role and are more likely to stick concretely to it in order to bring success to their work. This is why it's so important to prioritize professional development when you're managing a scattered team. Yes, it's more difficult and often too expensive to send a team member to a conference, but you need to find ways to engage professional development. And remember, prioritizing professional development doesn't mean spending money, but it can. It can mean giving more time for mentorship within your team, giving time for people to grow their knowledge, attending webinars like these, reading more, giving them time to learn, etc. And it can find external mentors to teach and inspire these people. When you empower remote teams with resources, many of which I just talked about, which are free, you're going to make them more bought in, feel more supported, and work more effectively. But whatever resource you do, it takes effort and leadership on your part, something that I highly, highly recommend. There seems to be a problem with the handouts that we posted, so we're going to work really hard with Joyce to make sure you get them. There's actually 2 handouts. One is a list of our slides, which you can get, but the second one is a remote team worksheet that we've developed that we can talk about at the end. I promise, though, that you'll get access to these handouts, hopefully before the end of the lecture, or if not, shortly thereafter. Hiring the right people. So I think this is obvious, but I need to go through it because it's especially important with remote teams, and some of the skills you're looking for in making these hiring decisions may be a little different. If you are trusting a staff member to work either from home or from an office away, it is so important to make sure that your hiring practices are incredibly sound. You need individuals that are self-motivated, have strong communication skills, and are confident to honestly share their opinions, concerns, and ideas, and are motivated by both results and deadlines. Sometimes remote people who might be scared to talk to their managers or have an idea that they don't know how to incorporate, you're going to lose effectiveness. You might lose a great idea, and so communication is so important. We've had some experience hiring remote teams, and some of the things that we look for when we hire are trustworthiness, self-motivation, having the ability to prioritize, being a great written communicator, and someone who has strong problem-solving abilities, especially because they're often working remotely. If you hire someone who doesn't meet these requirements and expect them to perform effectively without supervision, you're going to quickly, unfortunately, run into challenges. At Keela, we have a really rigorous hiring process. We make people go through 3 or 4 interviews and do a written assignment, which usually takes 3 or 4 hours. If they're remote workers, these Skype and phone calls, which are part of these interviews, are all the more important. Testing communication habits and processes helps us figure out whether someone working remotely could be a good fit, not just with skills and knowledge, but also with communication and organizational culture. And please note, this doesn't just apply to our paid staff. Picking the right volunteers, putting them through a rigorous vetting process is equally as important. Just because they don't get paid doesn't mean they don't have a cost. Managing volunteers takes time. Managing remote volunteers takes more time. And if they aren't a good fit or do poor work, there's a cost. And this cost means less time is spent on impact, which is what we all really care about. Respect. And I think respect is so important, but in some ways, it's something I've really struggled with. And no, not respecting my team, but respecting my team's time. We work in tons of different time zones. Maybe someone starts at 7 a.m. Eastern time. Others, because they work in BC or whatever, start at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. And that's if you're lucky. I use starts at God knows when a.m. But time zones make it important to have clear guidelines of your team's schedules. And this is where I struggle. Don't send an onslaught of emails or texts or phone calls at times when people aren't working. Trust me, it can really demotivate staff members. And while you might not be conscious of it and not doing anything, on purpose or not disrupting people on purpose, it can have devastating effects, especially if your team members are working from home, like so many of us on this call. It is up to you as a leader to ensure that boundaries are set and that people's personal lives are not compromised. There's no faster way to ruin someone's morale than slowly chipping away at all the time they spend with their families and doing the activities that bring them joy. In fact, there are many studies out there that show increased work hours beyond a reasonable workday do not actually increase output and productivity. Excuse me. Aaron Reed, a professor from Boston University, revealed in a study that managers could not tell the difference between employees who actually put in 80 hours of work and those who pretended to. There are subsequent studies that reveal overworking can lead to stress and subsequent health problems. You will no doubt have happier employees that produce a higher caliber of work if you ensure that their work-life balance is appropriate and respected. This is harder to do when you are not there to see that they close their laptop and make sure they leave the office. Make sure you're communicating with your remote team to drill in this value because it's really important. Now, we have touched a little bit on the power of volunteers, but as we all know, volunteers are a big deal. Whether it's an individual, a few, a large group, volunteers can make a huge impact. But volunteering has changed quite a bit over time, and I just wanted to spend a quick comment on this. No longer can you simply associate volunteer with door-to-door fundraising, planting trees, or picking up garbage. Volunteering has become so much more customized, with skills-based volunteering becoming more and more popular. Increasingly, stakeholders want volunteer opportunities that match their particular needs. Being associated with a cause, with an issue area, is no longer enough. It's undoubtedly clear that your volunteers or your potential volunteers are looking for more robust and meaningful ways to engage. And with that comes more administration and innovation when dealing with these requests, especially for those that are working remotely. Micro-volunteering, like those at Catch a Fire, where people can use professional skills to help nonprofits, has shown that even volunteering has become an effort that is managed over scattered teams. It is all the more important that you bring the right people into the team, people that you can manage using the same tools you would manage your paid staff with. At the end of the day, we're all working together to create greater impact for our causes. It's the same team. As leaders, it's our job to leverage the skills and knowledge of everyone working with us, regardless of where they are. Finally, my favorite, leveraging technology. My favorite way to improve scattered team management is tech, and specifically cloud-based tech. Cloud-based tech means software that can be software, tools, etc., that can be accessed from anywhere in the world, as long as you have an internet connection or a cell phone. Technology is like this, is making remote work possible, and technology is going to be one way that's going to help you succeed. Tech is our friend. You have a cell phone with you all the time. You have Skype or FaceTime. You have messaging systems. All of these things let you keep contact with your teams in ways we could never have imagined before. Better yet, there are great project management tools, ways to upload and share files easily, ways to communicate better. Quick question, what tech are you currently using to manage your remote or scattered team? If you could answer in the comment box, that'd be great. With tech, you can know exactly what tasks your team is working on, how they're progressing, and what struggles they're facing, all with the click of a couple buttons. There are lots of platforms out there that can help you manage your projects and tasks with your team members. You can use resources like Capterra or G2 Crowd that lists top softwares for different functionalities to help you with your different processes. With remote teams, using cloud-based tech, which they can access from anywhere or everywhere, becomes key. I'll take you through some of the things that the Keela family uses. Slack. This is our virtual team's office, and it seems like it's the office of many of you guys. At Slack, using Slack, we have conversations, many conversations, but it helps us keep these conversations in one place, and it avoids the evil, super long email threads. Google. God bless Google. We use Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Calendar. We even run our organization's email through Google. Cloud collaboration is key with our remote team, and Google's app set allows us to work on documents in real time. It allows us to make changes and be nimble in all of our work. It allows us to manage our calendars and files. We're very grateful for Google, and Google's really great to support the nonprofit sector, so you can find out how there's lots of discounts that you can use. Skype. I don't think there's anyone in the world who uses Skype more than some of my team members. We use Skype to bring our teams together. I use Skypes with our team every single day. So does Sam, and so does Salima. Through video calling, especially seeing someone's face, no matter where they are in the world, we are able to alleviate some of the feelings of alienation. Remote workers are literally in the room, and Skype makes that super accessible. So does FaceTime. Actually, for all of you who use Slack just launched a video service, which is really cool, and I recommend checking it out. A CRM. A CRM can stand for a community relationship manager or a contact relationship manager. Basically, it's a list of contacts with lots of really important information. At Keela, I'll be honest, we use Keela. Find a system that works for you, but you need a CRM that will keep track of your contacts, your stakeholders, your relationships, your donors. Make sure whatever you use is powerful and easy to use. It tracks all of your interactions, and it keeps the ability to keep it gives you the ability to keep all team members who are interacting with those contacts the ability to keep abreast of what's going on. Nothing is worse than reaching out to a stakeholder a couple of times for the same thing. It makes you look less professional and makes them less motivated to give or engage. A project management tool. Again, we use Keela, but there's lots of options out there. You could use something like Asana or Trello or whatever. Whatever you use, keep track of your projects and tasks. Assign them to your team members. Interact, and most importantly, be able to see progress in real time. This gives us all the ability to keep all of us, ourselves included, accountable. Now, obviously, sorry Joyce, but I have to say something about Keela. It's my job as the leader here of our awesome team. Keela honestly is the masterpiece of my life work thus far, because it helps hundreds of nonprofits with their work every single day. Someone on our team told me that we're actually working in 13 different countries now, which is an honor and an incredible responsibility. A lot of these people manage their teams remotely, and because of that, I think Keela is super relevant to today's conversation. How does Keela help with remote teams? Well, it lets you manage your tasks, collaborate on email marketing, on donor engagement, on receiving, and sharing your resources with your team and with your stakeholders. Keela empowers any organization by automatically keeping your contact database up to date in real time. It lets you set up follow-ups and provide spaces for internal team communication. It has lots of other functionality too, but our focus is really about remote work here. One of the great parts about Keela is that we have for our Canadian clients, which all of you are, a Canadian server. That means that your data, your files, your CRM is all stored in Canada, so that we're not subject to things like the Patriot Act in the United States. We're also proud to be a Canadian organization, and we're really excited as a CRA compliant tool to empower all of our Canadian users. At Keela, we've built a powerful management tool for nonprofits that is both powerful and accessible. More importantly, it empowers organizations doing amazing work to become more effective and more efficient, and that includes those working remotely, just like we do. Before we call it a day, I'm going to open up the floor to any, well, proverbial floor, to any questions, and Phil is going to give me a list of them as we speak. What is the tool Keela uses to prevent long email chains? Great question. Well, we use Keela. We also use Slack a little bit, but we use Keela because Keela, for every project and every contact and every task, allows you to leave notes and comments, and these are directly integrated with your email inbox. So, if whether it's with an external stakeholder, you could have single chains of communication, or with people within your team. So from Melanie. Hi, Melanie. How much accompaniment should a distance worker need if they have the skills and experience? Are there tools to help manage HR at a distance? Melanie, it's a good question, and I think it's not going to be the greatest answer, but it really depends on the person you hire. I think in this, what's most important is that you are onboarding your team really effectively. Make sure they understand what their job is, what their roles are, what resources they can draw from. And if you do that, and keep open communication channels like we talked about, you should be able to, they should kind of manage themselves. Again, use a project management tool, whether it's Keela or something else, to manage their tasks, to see what they've completed and not completed, to comment on the work they're doing and give them a space to ask questions. I think this will really help to minimize the too much hands-on oversight, especially if they're remote. Naomi, hey Naomi, what software do you recommend for long-distance teams or team members? I'm going to go back to saying anything cloud-based. It depends on what you're doing. Again, to Melanie's question, using a project management tool, whether it's Keela or Asana or Trello, they're all great because they allow you to log in from anywhere around the world. Whew, Jennifer, you have a great question that's becoming a big problem across the world, and we've experienced it with, especially at End Poverty Now, but we have projects in really remote parts of the world, like in central Rwanda or rural Philippines. Your question, for those of you who don't know, is what do you suggest with areas of without widespread internet, high-speed internet, or cell service? Well, find a tool that empowers you to work offline and then update your tasks or your comments or your workflow once you log back online. Keela is actually working on this for our remote app, which is going to come out at the end of this year or maybe in Q4, but something that allows you to online, offline work so people can still constantly be updating their tools, and when they have a high internet connection, it'll upload it. The other thing is some things like Google's apps will allow you to use a low bandwidth version, and that's really valuable too. But this is a problem that even Mark Zuckerberg is working on by trying to build high-speed internet tools everywhere around the world. That being said, honestly, sometimes it's rural Western countries that have the worst internet, because places like, I know I have a friend working on high-speed internet and fiber optics in Kenya. They're building new infrastructure quickly. So people in Thunder Bay or Nunavut are those that are often suffering much more than they are in some of the developing world, or what we used to call the developing world. Maurizio, it's nice to meet you. You asked the question, what resources or tips would you recommend if we work with remote staff with little or no technical expertise? It's a great question. And one that, again, that I defer to saying, find a tool that's so easy to learn. The average nonprofit staff member and volunteer is between 45 and 60. This is a demographic that is phobic, to say the least, of technology, and especially new technology. Find a tool that's easy to use. And again, make sure you empower them with the resources, the video training, whatever it is, to teach them. Again, I can speak to at Keela, we've built our tools with the 50-year-old in mind. So we offer a lot of training tools and easy to learn tools that allow these workers who are tech phobic or not as technologically sophisticated, and I don't say that in a bad way, to actually feel like, wow, this tech empowers me and it's not a burden. The worst thing that any of us can do is to grab technology that's too complicated and makes these remote team members less effective. That's a huge challenge, and one that at least we at Keela are working really hard to solve. From Cheryl, what to do about a manager that doesn't respect work-life balance? Cheryl, I often used to be that that manager, and I've learned the hard way. I think the key thing goes back to one of those 8 tips, especially if it's remote, and that's communication. You are going, as a manager, you're going to frustrate and eventually alienate your workers if you don't respect them. But sometimes crazy people like me don't know what work-life balance is for different people. And that means we as managers need to communicate with our team members, but also us as team members need to communicate with our managers what our expectations are for work-life balance. If they don't respect it, people will quit. People will find better jobs, or they'll do less effective work. I'd rather a team member do more effective work less than less effective work more. But that goes back to communication, especially, which is challenging with remote team members. Again, it goes back to building water cooler moments, building trust, and making sure that we can have the rapport to have those tough conversations. Janice asks, easy to learn tools is a great suggestion. How do you know what's easy? Well, obviously at Keela I'm biased, so Janice, it's hard to not plug Keela here. But what I will say is you can look to things like Capterra or other review softwares. Easy to use is one of the criteria upon which they are graded. Otherwise, send an email to somebody like TechSoup, to somebody like Keela. If it's, we are always happy to tell you our feedback and experience on other softwares, even if it's not our own. We care about empowering the sector, and that's not always using Keela. And people like Joyce and her team at TechSoup, people like Phil and our team at Keela will help you if you ask those questions. Also ask your peers. Our community, and I mean that as the nonprofit sector as a whole, cares about each other. We shouldn't be competitive. And so people will know. You'll start to get into a groove, and you can ask your peers about these questions. They'll know because people have tried and failed, and people have tried and succeeded with lots of software. But again, find a software that's built by people from the sector for the sector, because that's what's going to be the easiest for us in this conversation. From Ken. Ken, do you have any concern with storing information on Google servers in the U.S.? That's a complicated question, and I think I'm actually going to be doing another webinar on privacy data, which, Ken, I recommend you come to, and Phil will communicate with you the dates for these things. Here's what I'll say. Regardless of whether we like or don't like the President of the United States, Democrats and Republicans have both supported the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act gives the U.S. government the right to search any data stored in the United States with good reason. Now, while Canadian privacy law doesn't forbid it, at least in most provinces, it has made a lot of our clients uncomfortable. So Google, I mean, we use Google. We don't, we're okay with storing our email data on it, but we don't have, donor or stakeholder data on Google, right? And it comes to personal preference. Privacy is not so much a legal question often as it is how people feel, a trust, a sort of intangible question. So while I have no issue, Ken, storing stuff on Google, and I think a lot of organizations, especially those with sensitive information in Canada, doing human rights work, doing privacy work, doing these kinds of work do, and that's why Keela stores all of its Canadian client data on servers. I think they're in Montreal. Last question, as we need to wrap up. Please do ask any questions on Twitter at Nejeed, N-E-J-E-E-D, but I will pick one more, and that's going to be from Megan, and that's a question about age diversity. Megan asks, we find some of our older team members and volunteers struggling with adapting to using tech such as Skype. Any suggestions or comments? Well, the key is getting them to have grandkids, because then they'll find a way to learn really quickly. But jokes aside, Megan, that's a tough question. And I think it's challenging because, again, it goes back to comfort and trust. What I'll say is this: onboard them slowly. If you try to rush people, they become uncomfortable. And the faster you do things, the less effective it could be. So go slow, provide them lots of training, empower them, and show them the benefits of learning. That's really key. If they can feel less alienated, if they can feel more empowered, if they can do better work, and you can show them before they use these tools that that's how it's going to be, you're going to find them adopting it really a lot quicker. But make sure you have great help resources, things like videos that show them how to use things. It'll make things a lot easier. Megan, I don't know if I'm answering, but I'm certainly trying here. I'm going to conclude with this. Whatever you do, know you have all the tools, both tech resources, but also all the stuff we talked about previously that you need to positively manage teams across borders. You just need to find the tricks that work best for the group of unique individuals that make up your team, and I know you can succeed. I encourage you to constantly be trying new strategies and technology for your scattered team. To help you start working through these challenges, please feel free to download, once we've got it fixed, our worksheet attached. This will help you formulate your thoughts and better create a plan for remote work and strategies to most effectively engage remote workers. I wanted to say thank you to TechSoup Canada and to all of you for being part of this webinar. Keela aims to strengthen the sector with industry knowledge and best practices to help your nonprofit take the next step to doing great work. We invite you to join us again to our next webinars, which include I've incorporated a nonprofit, now what? Your 90 days, or understanding the basics of charity law, and demystifying data, why nonprofits need to embrace big data, and effective storytelling, how changing your narrative can change your organization. I encourage all of you to come and learn more about Keela, to talk to us, to ask us questions that I didn't get to. Check out www.keela.co or send us emails, tweet us, but most importantly, thank you for doing the great work that you do. Civil society, which all of us are part of, is so fundamental to democracy. You're making our country and our world better, and for that I will continue to serve you all and work hard and say thank you for doing your work, and thank you to Joyce and TechSoup for making this happen. Joyce, I assume I'm supposed to hand it to you, so I'm going to do that now.
Nejeed, for answering all of our questions. And I know everyone, if your question has not been answered, please fill out the post-webinar survey that will launch after this webinar is over. It should pop up right on your screen. If you have any outstanding questions or you want to learn more about how Keela can help your nonprofit, or if you're not familiar with TechSoup and you would like us to reach out and help you with your tech needs, just fill that out. and then I'll get back in touch with you and connect you to the right people. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. I'll also attach the recording in the post-webinar email follow-up and the handouts. I've been getting mixed reviews that it's not working for some people, working for others, so do try to use Firefox, Mozilla Firefox to download the resources directly through GoToWebinar. I've also uploaded it
And
to
Joyce,
Box.
Phil will also put a link to that on Twitter. So anybody on our Keela.co Twitter and on my personal Twitter. So if
Yes.
people can't download it, they can just do that. We'll do that in the next half an hour.
Yeah, and it's actually available right now online through Box. I've uploaded that during the presentation, so the link is in the chat. And then as just like another follow-up, it will also be available in the post-webinar email. So then there's resources in almost every channel that I believe we have covered. I believe that's everything. I want to thank you again, Nejeed and Phil, for joining us and teaching us about remote team management. And I want to thank everyone for taking time to join us today for this webinar. All right, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.